The next exhibit, I'm afraid, is the Cayman Islands again. Yeah. But it ain't like any other display you've ever seen. Because it is where the world of postal history and social history collide. And it consists of two separate correspondences, one going out from the Cayman Islands and one coming into the Cayman Islands. The first one going out from the Cayman Islands has quite a lot of philatelic and postal history significance as well, and is in fact quite valuable because there are one or two very scarce bits in there. The other one coming into the Cayman Islands is total rubbish. It was given to me by James as a present, so you can understand that's why it was total rubbish. And I ought to be, I am actually extremely grateful for James giving it to me, because he knows I'm interested in that kind of thing. But it is very ordinary in philatelic. The first is the Merron Hogg correspondence. Theo Hogg was a Northern Irish Methodist missionary or minister, I'm not quite sure which, who was posted to the Cayman Islands in about 1936-37. Whilst he was there, he became romantically involved with a lady called Vita Merron. She was the daughter of the owner of the biggest, he was the biggest merchant in the Cayman Islands at the time. When I lived in the Cayman Islands, Vita was still alive. I would recognize her, but I didn't actually know her. But her father's business by then looked very sad indeed compared to the Kirks of this world who have taken over the commercial life of the Cayman Islands. There are, I own about 24 covers. I think there are more because I think the correspondence actually was monthly, because Theo went back to the UK shortly before the outbreak of the war. I'm not sure whether he couldn't get back to the Cayman Islands because of wartime restrictions, but in any event, he stayed in Northern Ireland throughout the war, and the correspondence is between Vita in the Cayman Islands and Theo in Northern Ireland. And most of the letters do not have the correspondence in. One of them does. And it's sad, really, because it's a Dear John letter. And it's Vita writing to Theo saying, "Look, you've hurt me a great deal because you've asked me to come over to Northern Ireland." This was just after the war. And what she was upset about was he hadn't asked her to marry her to go. And as she puts it in the letter, "I know what this is about. You've asked your parents to run the rule over me." And she says, "I'm awfully sorry, but I think it's better that we end this correspondence now." Oh, yes. Now, philatelically, it's very interesting because in the Cayman archives there are there's almost no information, because many of the post office archives were burnt down, about airmail rates during the war and immediately after the war. And Vita was meticulous about the way she actually franked these letters. I think Theo must have been a collector, and that's why they came onto the market after he died. And she has franked them in all kinds of ingenious ways, but she makes up the going rate. And so we can actually detect what some of the airmail rates were during the war, which is normally quite difficult at the Cayman Islands, because frequently mail is either underfranked or overfranked. One of the interesting bits is that, where are we here? 1941, letters are franked with war stamps. And it's quite clear to me that the post office ran out of George VI adhesives at that time. Another interesting thing is that she illustrates the flown all the way rate from the West Indies to the UK during the war, which is one of the rates that I actually discovered in the Cayman archives when I was there, which was 2 and 2 halfpenny a half ounce, and it was franked that way on the understanding that it would be flown if there was room, but otherwise it would go by surface mail. And there are 3 or 4 covers in there where you can see that one of them was flown and the other ones definitely were not flown, and they were sent surface mail. There's also a multiple of that, which I originally misinterpreted, not really being an airmail expert, but I'd forgotten that, of course, the way airmail rates were constructed at the time, they were constructed of a surface rate which progressed in ounces, and an airmail rate which progressed in half ounces. So I was looking for an exact multiple of the 2 and 2 penny rate, and it's not. The real rate is 4 and 5 and halfpenny, and there's a couple of examples there. That's the first of these. The second one is the Buller-Johnson correspondence. And Buller was a 19-year-old pupil teacher in Cayman High School at the time, and this is the way, in many West Indies countries, this is where they provided their teachers. They were not necessarily trained before going to teacher training college. They were pupil teachers teaching in the school at which they'd been a pupil. And the interesting thing about Buller, apart from the fact that you actually read all these letters coming into her, which demonstrate that she must have been an absolutely lovely person who would actually do anything for anybody, is that she had inherited her brother Noel's pen pal dealer correspondence when his father died and he went to the US to work for National Bulk Carriers. And so she is basically, the correspondence is from all these sort of elderly uncles writing to Buller and thanking her for the modern stamps that she is providing with her. And there's one letter there which actually lays out the terms of her business, which is a 10% premium to a new prospective customer. There's also a letter there in which included is not the incoming letter, but the outgoing letter. So she must have put the incoming letter and sent it back to the originator by mistake. The other interesting thing about it is that her brother Noel, in due course, became Postmaster General, and her brother Sir Vassal, who was the eldest brother, is the man who is got his knighthood and is credited with basically almost single-handedly dragging the Cayman Islands out of its penury in the late 30s into the kind of advanced financial economy that exists today. What Buller would have thought if she went back to the Cayman Islands today, because she got married in 1966 and emigrated to the United States, I don't know. I don't know whether she would have gasped in awe or cried. So there you are.